Hey, friends. Welcome to another episode of Digging Deeper Biblical Answers to Life's Tough Questions. Um, as usual, I had a topic planned for today, and I finished work on it yesterday. And as I was at work today, thinking about recording it because I've got a busy weekend today, and God told me, well, you're not doing what you planned on doing. I've got another idea for you. And I thought, oh, great. Here we go again. And have you ever argued with God? That always has one outcome. You lose. Well, we won a couple rounds. Well, actually, I went one round. And I lost, as usual. But anyway, today we're going to talk about faith. And we're going to dig a little deeper into faith. I was going to talk about the disciples, but God told me, yeah, you can wait on that. I want you to talk about faith today. So today's topic is going to be on faith. So I want to do a gut check on everybody today. What kind of faith do you have? How is your stand on faith? But first, before we get into that, what is faith to you? What's your definition of faith? I'm going to give you, if we look at Hebrews 11:1, it says, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. So that's what the Bible tells us faith is. So today we're going to look at some examples of faith, from no faith to what I consider the greatest example of faith that we can actually have. So, no faith is just that. It is not having any faith whatsoever. And I can't really give examples of that. I can give tons of examples of that in my personal life, and there's a lot of examples of that in the Bible, but I really don't want to dwell on that today because I'm hoping you have faith. One of at least the three or four that I'm going to talk about today. First, I want to talk about what caught me really off guard when I looked into it. The first one I want to talk about is Peter's faith. And we all remember when the disciples were out in the boat and they thought they saw a ghost out on the water, and it turned out to be Jesus, right? And Jesus told Peter to get out of the boat and walk on the water. And Peter got out of the boat and started walking on water. And once he took his eyes off of Jesus, he began to sink. And Jesus said, "Oh, ye of little faith." Well, that kind of caught me off guard. I know Peter was a fisherman. He knows how to swim. But me, I'm not really a swimmer, so being in that boat, I'd have had a life jacket on because that water's probably pretty deep, so I'm going to be having a life jacket on. Peter getting out of that boat and starting to walk on water. To me, that shows a lot of faith. More faith than I probably could have had. I don't know how many of you have ever tried to walk on water, but it's not something I've tried, not something I'm ever going to try. So my question would have been, if I was Peter, and my question to God when I read that, what do you mean, ye of little faith? That shows a tremendous amount of faith, if you ask me. nowhere in recorded history has anybody ever walked on water except Jesus. No time in human history before that, no time during, and certainly no time after. So just getting out of that boat, to me, showed a tremendous amount of faith. That's probably a great amount of faith, if you ask me. And to be told by Jesus, ye of little faith, I'm sorry, but that would have ticked me off if I was Peter. Because he was stepping out on faith. He was stepping out on water where he could have sank to the bottom and drowned if he didn't know how to swim. But and to be told by Jesus, you have little faith. So, my first instinct, Jesus, Lord, how are you saying that Peter had no faith? And the response was, look up the word little. So I did what most people would do if you don't know a definition of a word, which I thought I knew the definition of little. Teeny weeny, So I looked up the definition of little. And wasn't the first definition I saw. And I go where everybody else goes, is I go to the Internet Dictionary. And it might have been the second or the third one. It says short lasting, not enduring. Okay, I get your point, Lord. He had great faith, but it just didn't last long. So, point taken. I get where you're coming from. Peter had faith. It just didn't carry him over long enough to walk from point A to point B, from the boat to Jesus. He probably got out there, started walking, started doubting himself. Started thinking, what am I doing? I'm taking my eyes off Jesus. And how many times did Peter take his eyes off Jesus during the whole discipleship period? He doubted him 3 times. I mean, Peter was a great disciple, but he had short, enduring faith. So the next one I want to look at is Abraham. We all know Abraham had great faith, right? He had faith in God that he would have a child at the age of almost 100. That takes a lot of faith. And then, top it all off, God told him, climb up a mountain. Sacrifice your son. So, tied his son up, put him on an altar, and was going to sacrifice him. But that's not the faith I want to talk about today. The faith I want to talk about is his son, Isaac. And get the old Bible Sunday school picture of Isaac out of your head at this point. Because what I grew up thinking in Bible school, in Sunday school, was Isaac was a child. Bible scholars and Jewish history or Jewish tradition and lore say that, and even there's some hints in the Bible that say Isaac was not a child, because at this point Abraham was probably around 125 years old, which would make Isaac probably anywhere from a teenager to his late 20s. One of the best serving clues to that is that when they went up the mountain, Isaac carried all the wood for the sacrifice. So he'd have to be a pretty robust young man to do that. A child, a teenage, or anything, young teen, young boy wouldn't be able to carry that much wood for a sacrifice. So the faith I want to talk about is Isaac's. They got up to the mountaintop. He had enough faith in his father, Abraham, that he let Abraham tie him up and place him on the altar. Now think about this. Give this some thought. You're a 20-something. Your dad is 100-something. Are you going to let him tie you up and place you on an altar without some pushback? I know, me personally, I'd be thinking, Dad, what the heck are you doing? There'd have been a little tussle there. There'd have been some resistance. There might have even been some punches thrown. Some wrestling going on. But Isaac had enough faith in his father and his God. Because Abraham told him, when Isaac asked, where's the lamb that we're going to sacrifice? And Abraham told him, the Lord will provide. The Lord will provide our sacrifice. And then to be tied up and placed on the altar, and then even to go as far as Abraham raising the knife to bring it down on Isaac. I'd have been, oh, okay, let's put an end to this now. I think I'd have been drawing the line there. I don't know if I had that kind of faith. Oh, we got a butterfly. That shows to me that's a lot of faith. Not only in your dad, but in the good Lord above. And the third amount of faith, or the fourth amount, depending on how you're tracking this, is in Mark chapter 5, around verse 21 through 42, is the story of Jairus and his daughter. If you know this story, you know this story. It's one of my favorite Bible passages, Bible stories. I can preach 3 or 4 sermons out of this. But the one I want to touch on today is the woman with the issues of blood. Jairus went to Jesus. If you're not familiar with the story, Jairus went to Jesus. His daughter was dying. The physicians did everything they could, but she was dying. He went to Jesus and said, Jesus, come heal my child. And Jesus said, okay. And as they were walking to Jairus' house, the woman with the blood issues pushed her way through the crowd. Now, if you know about anything about the Hebrew traditions and the Hebrew law, this lady was considered unclean. She couldn't be around anybody. She certainly couldn't touch anybody. But yet she pushed her way through the crowd and fell at Jesus' feet as he was walking by and touched the hem of his robe. And when she did that, Jesus stopped and everything stopped, and he said, who touched me? And, one of the disciples said, and I could see it now, I could hear Peter, okay, Jesus, look at this crowd. Everybody touched you. Come on, everybody touched you. What do you mean, who touched you? But her touch was so powerful that it drained the energy from Jesus. He felt her touch. It drained power from him. Her faith was so strong. Her faith that the filthiest part of her, because according to Hebrew law, She was unclean. She was filthy. She was dirty. She shouldn't be around anybody. She shouldn't touch the Messiah, let alone anybody she pushed through. But yet, she touched his garments. And he felt it, just the touch of his garment. And he wanted to know who it was. And she proceeded to tell him she's had this problem for 12 years. Now, look at the faith she had. She had the faith that the cleanest part of her, which was still dirty, according to Hebrew law, the cleanest part of her was healed by touching the dirtiest part of him. Somebody who was so clean and so pure touched the dirtiest part of him, of the Lord, the hem of his robe, which probably was dragging on the ground, getting filthy, dirty. But yet, he felt it. She had that much faith that she didn't even have to ask him to heal her. She had the faith that just touching his robe was going to heal her. To me, that is the ultimate faith. Now, to dig a little deeper into this, some people ask, why don't my prayers get answered? And I have to ask them, what kind of faith do you have? Do you have the faith of Peter? Just you say your prayers, you ask Jesus, but you have that short-term prayer? Because I've been asked many times, how does God answer prayer? And there's 3 ways God answers prayer. Yes, no, and in my time. Maybe those prayers are in my time. So, do we have the faith? Do we have the faith of Peter? We don't have we have little faith, not small in stature, but we just have short-term faith. That those prayers, we want those prayers answered now. We want them now. We want what we want because we're human. We don't have the time or the patience to wait in God's time. Or do we have Abraham's faith that you'll answer him in your time? Or do we have the faith of that woman with the issues that I know you're going to do it, and I know you're going to do it when you do it. It doesn't matter when you do it, as long as you do it. Because we know requests from God can be answered, even by the dirtiest of us. Because if we go to the beginning of chapter 5 of Mark, when Jesus went into an area, there was a demonic man who was possessed. I'll let you read this story, but I'll give you a brief summary of it. When he entered that area, there was a demonic man who was possessed. And when Jesus cast out those demons, who were named Legion, because there were many, what did they do? If you don't know, they requested that Jesus cast them into a herd of pigs. And what did Jesus do? He granted their request. Now, my question to you, if Jesus grants the wishes of lowly, filthy, dirty demons who rebelled against the Father, don't you think that he will grant your request if it is done in his name? We just have to have the faith, one way or another. One of the examples that I gave you, we have to have the faith that Jesus will answer our prayers. God will answer our prayers. It's just how we ask and what kind of faith we have. Do we have the faith to jump in the deep end without the life jacket? Or do we still need our floaties when we jump in? Think about that, friends. Give that some thought. So next week I'll try to talk on what I was planning on talking about this week. But until next week, stay blessed and have a good weekend.